Hello, everybody.
Don't get straight, no, no, no. Oh, I ain't getting straight. Don't get straight.
Bear with me a second while I do something.
I ain't getting straight. I'm sick of the suffering. Can't stand the pain. Don't get straight.
That is an original song by Stacy Seabrook. If you all don't know who he is, you should check him out. So just real quickly share this on Twitter so that more people can join. Hello, Tanya, Shelly, Michelle. Oh, well, I'm glad you finally got to catch me. Hello, John. So I'm just going to share this on Twitter real quick to let people know it's actually happening right now. I did actually reply to a Kim Kardashian tweet earlier that she was saying she was watching Making a Murderer. So I replied and said, if you're interested, tune in. So don't know that will happen, but hopefully a lot of people following Kim might be interested in coming here for a little discussion. So mainly what I was looking to do today was to talk about some specific issues, because I was rewatching obviously today when I had time. I was rewatching some of the episodes and stuff, so I had kind of some ideas of what I wanted to talk about. So I was going to talk about some specific issues here. Hold on just a second while I make this tweet. Okay. So, anyways, hopefully we might get a few people from that, from me replying to that tweet. We'll have to see. And so the main issues that I was looking to talk about today, the main things that I had basically made my bullet points of what I wanted to talk about were, like, number one, the blood in the RAV4. There's kind of a lot of things, but that's one of the first things they talk about, like in episode 1. She's there with Stuart James, her blood spatter expert. And so I want to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the fact, and mainly these are the important points I think that people need to understand about this case right now, and why these things are important, because they go against what the prosecution has laid out and said had happened. So we want to talk about a little bit about how Teresa was actually killed at the back of the RAV4. And that's what the spatter on the interior of the cargo door tells us. So I wanted to talk a little about that. Then I wanted to talk about the Hood Latch DNA, because that is such a big deal, because that's like, I mean, after the first Making a Murderer came out, that was immediately one of the things that Ken Kratz was coming out and going, oh, what about the Hood Latch DNA? What about the Hood Latch DNA? And talking about how ridiculous it would be that officers were carrying around vials of sweat, when that's not how it would be done. And we hear, in this video, her one of her experts explaining that that's not really the way it would be done. If you're going to do it, you would do it with a swab. You would look for a piece of evidence, an extra piece that's not logged, and there is two swabs in this case that were taken that were not logged and thrown into a trash can, essentially, or into a biohazard can. After being collected from Steven. So it's all of the pieces have the potential to fit into place here, because when you look at it, why were they taking extra swabs of Steven that they shouldn't have been taking? And it's just really odd stuff. But yeah, so the Hood Latch DNA and how that actually got there, and the sheer amount of it. Item FL, which is the bullet. I really liked it when Zellner and some of her people were going there to the garage and doing their little testing with shooting the bullets and that sort of thing. Sorry I haven't gotten to the comments yet, because I wanted to just go over what I was looking to go over today. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is obviously the CD and the computer. Now, it's obvious. Well, it's obvious to anybody who's watched all 10 episodes, obviously, that Zellner is now saying that it was Scott and Bobby. And one of the reasons why the CD is important is because the CD would have allowed Dean and Jerry to understand that the computer contained information that they would have been able to use to get to raise Bobby to the level to meet the Denny requirements. If Denny was if Bobby was a Denny suspect, could meet the Denny threshold, I don't see him testifying for the prosecution, because if he testifies for the prosecution, Dean and Jerry roast him with all the stuff that was on that computer, and you can't deny that it was in his room. There was a picture in the documentary that computer was sitting in his room, and it's just so you can't deny that. So one thing I would remind everybody though is that when it comes to Scott and Bobby in all of this, I in good conscience cannot be extremely accusatorial and everything about Bobby and Scott. I will say that the computer evidence is definitely something that's concerning, and as the evidentiary hearing hopefully soon again will be played out, we will get to learn a whole lot more about this whole situation. We will get to see what the state has to say about it, and what counter pieces of evidence they might have to possibly, there's so much that needs to happen yet. Unfortunately, we've been getting obstructed by Judge Sukowicz up to this point. I say obstructed because even Fallon thought that the evidentiary hearing was going to be coming after Zellner's original filing. Even he thought so, because Zellner was they were talking and making arrangements to get more evidence and that sort of thing. Fallon completely thought an evidentiary hearing was coming, and when Judge Sukowicz denied it and has been denying everything the way she has, it's created this situation. Now it's got to go to the appeals court. Now the appeals court has to look at it, and they have to order the evidentiary hearing, essentially, is where we're at. So anyways, let me go ahead and look at some of the comments here. Hello everybody. Hello Mary Henry. You just finished the entire season. Good, Michelle Blair. That's good, because I intend to talk about stuff from the whole entire season. So haven't seen the second. You haven't seen the second episode yet? Oh boy. Well, yeah. Well, we're gonna be talking about. I don't know if you want to stay here or not, because we're gonna be talking about the entire season, I think, there, Tanya. But I think that. Oh, you haven't seen the second season yet. Oh, I see. Well, like I said, still applies. Shelly, I'm rewatching it. I rewatched it today a bit. Yep. Binge watched. Yep. KZ's a bomb. Yep. Oh, you like my shirt? Yeah. Sorry. Let me put it. Figure this is one of my favorite ones, because obviously, for obvious reasons. So, they found trace of swab fibers in the hood. Okay, 2 swabs that were thrown away. Yes, absolutely. KK lied about the CD. Yes, he did. I mean, they were definitely playing games with that CD, and the problem is that a lot of the legal minds that I've been that I look at, and the people that I look to for the kind of more of the legal expertise, they're all saying that Ken Kratz could well get away with this. The courts may just decide, it's not that big of a deal. That's shocking to me, because what the prosecution was doing here with that CD, with the computer evidence, all of it, they were playing a game. They had it for 8 months, and suddenly they start dumping it on Dean and Jerry 3 weeks before Denny's due. It's obvious game being played there, and I just hope that the appeals court really looks at that and does something about it. Is it possible they planted images? I think not, because well, I'll put it this way, Justin Avery. If so, Zellner's expert will figure that out. Gary Hunt, her computer guy, that guy, he will be able to figure out somebody did that, because he'll be able to with the timestamps or something like that. He would most likely be able to suss that out. I still believe Stephen Avery's okay. Yeah, a lot of us believe that he was. I believe he was. He was framed. That's Dean and Jerry should have worked harder. Yeah, I think the problem came down to money in the end, if any, it came to a point where if they spent any more money, they wouldn't make any themselves, and I think that might have been just what it came down to in the end. But as it is now, Steven's got a lawyer, and he now, with this lawyer, like the state, has virtually unlimited resources. So the playing field has been leveled for Stephen Avery, and hopefully, if he's innocent, it's gonna come out, because Kathleen's got the resources to test everything, to test it 5 ways from Sunday. So I mean, hey, he's got the chance now, and we can tell that the state is looking scared by the way that they're reacting and conducting themselves in all of this. So doesn't it break your heart? Poor Brendan. Absolutely. Brendan, I don't know if I've told everybody here, but Brendan's the whole reason I'm here. You'll hear the guilters say things like, oh, you were duped by a documentary. I don't know how many of you actually have ever encountered people out there that believe Stephen and Brendan are guilty, but you'll encounter them, and it's funny, the first thing they'll say to you a lot of times is that, oh, you were duped by a documentary. Well, it's funny for me when people try to say that to me, because when I first finished the first documentary, I was not really convinced about Stephen. I really kind of was on the fence about Stephen, but I certainly thought that he didn't get a fair shake. I mean, I was certainly like, of that I was certain, but in terms of guilt and innocence, I was on the fence with Stephen. I wasn't totally convinced. Brendan is the reason why I ended up digging in, and I ended up researching, and ended up, learning everything about this case. And as I did that, I found more and more things that convinced me Stephen got a raw deal, that he was, that the probabilities were that he was actually innocent and was framed. And it took me probably 6 to 8 months to come to that realization after watching MAM, a month after it came out. I watched it in January, middle of January in 2016, which was basically a month after it came out. So I spent my first 6 to 8 months on the fence about Stephen, but eventually got to the point where I felt the probabilities were that Stephen had been framed and was innocent. I don't know that I would have got to that point if I hadn't been so convinced of Brendan's innocence, and hadn't been so motivated to get involved for that young kid who needed as many voices as possible to be speaking up for him. So what about the wax substance? Yeah, that whatever that is. See, now the only thing that bothers me about that thing is that when they do ballistics testing, they do use a waxy like substance to make the bullet stick to their little platform that they use, where they have the cameras and microscopes and all the little stuff pointed at this little thing. So they usually sometimes use a waxy stuff or whatever to stick it to that. So but what Kathleen was saying is that the actual amount of DNA that was found on it was consistent with the amount of DNA that you would get from somebody's chapstick. Now that's interesting, because when the quantification of those two things is similar, that makes it interesting. Melissa below, I agree. They're both probably innocent. I think that the investigation ignored obvious avenues, and we don't know what really happened, in my opinion. Rewatched all of Brendan's confessions. He is never tied down to any time that works. Right. Barb's phone records. Right. Yeah, no, Brendan's all over the place. He's guessing the whole time. I mean, he even tells Barb that I was guessing, like I guess on my homework. Robert Navani, hi. What's up, buddy? Each of the friends finding the real person is secondary. That blew my mind. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. What about withholding of the CD from the computer? Yep, that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. And it would be so important for me to want to know who had done this. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the one thing I hope in this, is that when Teresa's family and stuff, and more people in the wider world that maybe watched MAM but lost touch, didn't stick around, like some of the core, people like me, and other folks out there like TikTok Manitowoc or Mystic Jinx on Twitter, or Seven Pairs of Panties on Twitter, or Fog Haze, or there's just, there's, say, a couple hundred people that have been constantly on social media, constantly trying to make people aware of things about this case, and now Making a Murderer 2 came back around and is going to be able to make a lot of people aware of the things that we've been trying to make them aware of for a long time. And that's really the coolest part of it for me, really. That's I mean, I want everybody educated. I want everybody to know what's going on here. I don't like the way that Ken Kratz and agents of the state of Wisconsin are able to obscure and obfuscate things and have somehow managed to get people thinking that there's nothing wrong, basically. It infuriates me. So I guess we should go ahead and move on to what I was going to say about the subject. So I was going to, first thing we were probably, oh, you know what else? Wait, first off, I have to say, what a tremendous, tremendous weekend this actually was. Because, number one, Making a Murderer 2 came out, and it was absolutely just stellar. I love it, and I can't wait for more people to see it and realize what was in it. But then, just an hour and a half ago, the Dodgers whooped up on the Brewers, and they are now going to the World Series. So I am completely stoked that the Blue Crew stomped all over the Brew Crew, and they are now going to the World Series. So, anyways. Any updates since the show? Well, I'll tell you what, Bridget Leach, there's one thing that the show didn't talk about that came out, somewhat recently, is kind of somewhat recent news, and that is the investigation that Calumet County Sheriff's Department reopened into Teresa Halbach's death. And there is 60 pages of investigation reports. And the only tiny little bit of it that we got in MAM2 was they used an excerpt of the audio, the what's it called, the audio recording of John Dietering from Calumet County and Bobby Dassey. We got that little audio recording. That was it. That's all we got from there. There's a lot of stuff in the case of investigation that's very interesting. Josh Redant, in particular, the way he acts when John Dietering comes to question him and ask him questions is very interesting. I got videos about all of this, by the way, people. You can go into my videos if you go into the history or whatever. Go to my channel, go to videos, and go back and look for Queso 2.0. If you see Queso 2.0, you know it's about the new Queso investigation. But there's lots of interesting stuff going on in that investigation. Number one, well, okay, the Teresa's RAV4 had the damaged front blinker on the driver's side. All right. Basically, it's always been maintained that well, by those who believe Stephen's innocent, that damage happened when they were planting that RAV4 on the 31st, and so the state is now desperate to prove that damage existed before the 31st. It didn't. I'm at this point positive that it didn't. At first, Kathleen went to Teresa's insurance company. They said no, she never made a claim on that, whatever, we don't have anything about that. Then I was talking to some guilters or whatever who said, oh, no, it wasn't her own insurance, it was somebody else's that she had, whatever, traffic fender bender with or whatever, right? And I just went like, okay, that's plausible. That is plausible, which annoyed me, right? But then in Queso 2.0, we see that John Dietering in Calumet County has Mike Halbach desperately going through all of his old computers looking for any image of the RAV4 with the damage to that front blinker so that they can try to prove that damage existed previous to the 31st. Doesn't the fact that they're seeking out, that they're so desperate to prove that, doesn't that say something? Doesn't that show us that they are perhaps worried? Pretty worried. Anyway. So, Said he would arrest the coroner. I know, yeah, the coroner thing. When technically she is the lead law enforcement officer when there is a dead body in Manitowoc County. She is technically the lead law enforcement officer above the head sheriff himself. And so it's amazing all these things that you see happening, and we continue to see the officials in Manitowoc and those sort of people, telling us nothing to see here, nothing to see here. It's all perfectly fine and above board. No, it's not. It's absolutely not above board in any way, shape, or form. So, so as I was saying, we'll get to talking about the blood because that's what they talk about in the broken front light. Absolutely. So that's what they're talking about in episode 1 mainly with Stuart James. There is that blood, and I think in episode 2, and that's where you see like Zellner going over to Steven's trailer and pulling that sink out. Because Steven does remember his cut opened up and he was bleeding into that sink. He bled quite a bit into the sink, and then he had got it under control, and he had left with Chuck or Earl to go to Menards or whatever. So, and when he got home, he didn't really notice. He never went in the bathroom because he says he pissed outside or whatever. And then he didn't notice until he got up in the morning, went into the bathroom, and noticed that the sink was clean. So they collected that sink, and you see her and I believe that's Stuart James again still, who they are actually working on how you would collect blood from that sink. Would it actually work? Is it possible? That sort of thing. And so, like I said, you gotta look at it and say, if Stephen was bleeding, I'll tell you what, because the way that they explain how, the same way I do, the same way that I have a problem with it, is that the way that blood is in the car doesn't make sense. It's not in the places it should be. It's in really strange places. Some of it's flakes. It's just like so bizarre, the blood in there. And it was like Stuart James said when they were talking about it. They were like, when Kathleen was asking him, what do you think about this blood? Does it make sense to you or whatever? And they were saying about how, no, yeah, the dots don't connect. And Stuart James goes, the dots aren't even in the same books. So I thought that was, very powerful statement in my opinion. Didn't Stephen Avery always say Detective O'Neill had it out for him? He mentioned that sometimes he was saying he didn't trust O'Neill specifically. O'Neill bothers me greatly just because of his thing with the heck? Okay. See, just because of his interrogation with Brendan on November 6th of 2005. Where he makes a very, very clear promise to Brendan. Which brings me to another point about Kratt saying if they didn't have the March 1st confession, would they be able to retry Brendan? And he's acting all smug like, oh, to think that the state doesn't have more that they could use. Oh, yeah? What are you going to use, Kratz? Like the November 6th interrogation of Brendan where they make a very clear promise to him? Because that one won't hold up. Anyway. So they could find dry blood and rehydrate it possibly, yeah. Michelle Blair, what do you think about the changes made to the county-owned rock quarry? Like the new one, like the new berm and the road being done away with. I may not have been paying really close attention to that part. I know that from when I was there at Avery Salvage in June, that I know that Chuck went around with a bulldozer and he I think made all the berms higher, and then anywhere where there was a possible place for somebody to be able to enter from outside of the salvage yard, he created a berm, and he created them. They're all really high now. Because when we were behind Steven's trailer, we all jumped over, went back there and climbed up the berm behind Steven's trailer that they created now, just to make sure that no shenanigans like this could happen again in the future. And that berm was pretty high, but we jumped up on there to look over towards Kuss Road and the quarry and stuff there, and all those berms now around the salvage yard are very high because the Averys don't want any more BS happening there on their property. They're fed up. So Kratz threatened before they could use the call to his mom. Well, they played that at his trial, and that is a direct result of Len Kaczynski and Michael Kelly. To me, that should have made Brendan's conviction thrown out all on its own, in my opinion. I was actually wondering about that myself. I'm not exactly sure. I thought that was only something that could happen if I enabled Super Chat, which I don't think I did. But anyway, I'm not sure what the story is behind that. Maybe Robert Novotny will enlighten us. Overall, what did you think about the season as a whole? I think this season is great. I think this season is awesome, and it's going to educate people out there that weren't willing to read along with every single filing that came out and read about all of this stuff the way that some of us did. And those people are now going to be able to sit down and binge watch something, which is something they're used to doing. It's something that's in their wheelhouse. They're used to sitting down and binge watching something compelling, and so that's something that people are able to do. Not a lot of people are able to sit down at a computer screen and read documents for hours. It's just not something everybody's willing to do. So in this sense, it makes something that's easy, something that's very easily digestible for people, that I think is good, and that is what I think is going to help eventually turn this tide, because when more people out there realize what's been happening and what's been going on and how just ridiculous it all is, hopefully that awareness, more and more of that awareness will start to make a difference. Hearing Kratz's voice makes me want to punch a hole in the wall. The fact that blood wasn't mixed with TH doesn't make sense at all. Absolutely, that's true. The blood in the RAV4 just doesn't work. I mean, it just doesn't. And I mean, even where that squiggle is, where they claim that, it could have been because he touched it and this and that, whatever, blah, 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 whatever. You know what? It's 3 inches away from where you turn the key. Why on earth would he be touching? Why on earth is he leaving so much blood there, somewhere where you would never really touch, and none on the shifter or the steering wheel or anywhere else on the handle out to open the door, anywhere else that would make freaking sense? No, it's not there. It's in these really strange, odd places. Anyway. Kratz said before that Avery called Auto Trader at first and told him Teresa never showed up, and that's not true. That is most likely Steve Speckman who did that, and Kratz was trying to misrepresent it. Are you going to be here for a little longer? Want to switch computers? I'm going to be here. How long have I been going now? I've been going for about 28 minutes. I intended to go for at least an hour. So if that answers your question. He only changed his defense once he realized Bobby saw her there. Yeah. As far as I know, we only have Sergeant Colburn to attest to Steven saying that she never came there or whatever, all that. That's, to me, that's not true, and I don't put any stock in that. That was to C4P 420. The stain on the dash just looks like it is put by a swab. Yep, that's what most everybody thinks. What are your thoughts on Bobby? The thoughts on Bobby, well, that's kind of the last subject I was going to get into, but when it comes down to it, the activity on that computer was alarming. Yeah, it was just alarming. And I don't believe it was Brendan. I really don't believe it was Brian or Blaine. And so and the computer was in Bobby's room, and so it's a significant it's a certain amount of things that point toward Bobby. And then there was the fact that people were seeing Teresa's RAV4 parked on a highway that just happened to be right by Scott's house, and these things are strange and suspicious, and they do make me curious. But as I said before, Scott and Bobby are entitled to their presumption of innocence, because I cannot in good conscience, ignore their right to their presumption of innocence if I complain so strongly about the fact that Stephen was robbed of his. So it's how I feel about it, but I'm perfectly willing to talk about it, but just wanted to make sure people understand kind of where I stand on that. Bobby would have been the one on the computer with the porn. The bullet examination was cool, Bonnie. That's true. Let's see. And where's the RAV4 when it wasn't Scott's house at the time it was purchased? It after that. Wait, at the time he purchased it after that. Yeah, that's true. The house. Yeah. Well, but it ends up being the one he bought. Right. It's just a little bit odd. Like I said, one thing I didn't get about the season 2 is Barb on Facebook said Bobby never even saw Teresa. Right. Yes. Changing statements. Yeah. That's definitely something. Many of you may have heard me say that one of the reasons why I was able to determine that Brendan was telling the truth is, and this is something that all investigators usually use, when a person tells a story consistently over and over and over and over, and it doesn't change, they never seem to amend it or change it, that is a sign that that person is telling the truth. Most of the time, that is a sign that person is telling the truth. And when you get a situation where people aren't telling a consistent story, it creates doubt. Now, when it comes to Barb and stuff, I truly believe that they were bullied and harassed and badgered by the agents of the state to do and say things that they would not normally want to do. I'm not sure exactly what form that takes, but all I know is I know that they felt bullied. I know that Barb wanted to be there and wanted to be with Brendan, didn't really realize exactly how much trouble he was in, and she was at divorce court that day, March 1st. She was at divorce court. That's the other thing you hear about these idiots like Fassbender talking about. She had the opportunity to be there. She chose not to. She chose not to? She was in court. You numbskull. So yeah, so these are the I just feel that they were pressured and bullied, and I just don't know where I stand on that whole situation just yet. I need to see more information come out. I need to see more. For me, I'm preaching patience on this subject, and I know that more information is going to come out, and this can be evaluated properly. I certainly do not want to be going off half-cocked about something and have it turn out that it was incorrect and stuff. So I try to be pretty even keel about things. And with Bobby and Scott, it's definitely going to be one of those things where I will certainly acknowledge that there's suspicion there. There's something to be worried about, certainly about the content on that computer. There's many things there to be considered, but just I caution folks to be reserved and patient and wait for more information to come out. I know a lot of people don't trust Barb. Yeah, you cried for Barb. I know. Imagine how rough it is for her. I mean, that's the thing. And yeah, I mean, she's looking at a situation where, if she may get Brendan out, but then possibly Bobby and her husband might go in. I mean, so she's just going to be a stressed out person, and maybe doesn't always make the most, informed decisions. I don't know. I guess that's the best way to put it. But I think she's, when it comes to dealing with these figures of authority there in Wisconsin and stuff, she's just out of her depth and feels completely overwhelmed. And I think that's where a lot of this stuff comes from, and I think why a lot of people misunderstand her. Right? I know. Why in all this? Why do we continually catch agents of the state telling lies and that sort of thing, but we never catch Brendan and Steven really doing that? The only time you catch Brendan telling lies is when he has people coercing him. Took a bar. I take it that Barb didn't sign a waiver that said she didn't want to be there. Well, she signed on to it, obviously, probably early on, and some of the developments happened just within, with Scott and Bobby. Those developments really, where she was starting to accuse them, really started within the last probably 8 to 10 months. That wasn't, they decided that they were going to make MAM 2 almost 4 or 5 months after MAM came out. So she was probably signed on way back then, and so yeah, that's why I think obviously I'm not sure, but I can tell you what. They're probably not too crazy about that prison call being played on MAM too. The entire family has been pulled through absolute crap. Yep, it's horrible. Watching SA and Steven's mom and Brendan's mom breaks her heart. Yep, I understand, Shelly. It does. Barb has kept a lot of secrets, and I feel like Scott forced her to. That may be. I personally don't have enough information to know if that's true or not, so I certainly can't speculate on it. Lori Bowles, I'd be using something to avoid the stress. What happened here? This thing gets kind of messed up here. Barb can't win no matter which direction she chooses. It's both boys. Right. That's also another side of it. Yeah, she feels cornered and trapped, and I just have tremendous sympathy for her. And anything that people want to hold against her or get mad at her about, I kind of forgive as somebody who is just being overwhelmed and in over their head with a situation that they just had zero control over. So it's hard to have faith that either will get out regardless. Well, I don't know. Let KZ keep pounding at the door. That's the way she described it, and I thought that was a good kind of analogy of it. Let her keep pounding at the door with all of this evidence and more evidence that she's going to continue to uncover until the day Steven's out. She's going to keep knocking on that door. She's going to keep coming back and pounding on that door. And everybody now, now everybody has a pretty keen awareness of the case now and some of these factors and what the evidence is showing that the state clearly got wrong, and this is going to hopefully make a difference. Can anyone tell me if Netflix released the entire season or if it's just the first? No, it's the whole season. You just gotta get season 2 playing, and then for instance, on mine, as soon as I started the first episode, it just went episode to episode to episode. But once you get to the end of episode 10, it goes back to season 1 of MAM season 1. So. Teresa ex-boyfriend still a suspect. He has not been crossed off of the suspect list. But she mentions that she believes he was just involved with planting and things like that. Didn't Tom Yanda moved out, I believe 3 weeks before the murder. I don't see her letting up. Talking about Zellner? I don't think so. Yeah. I have to wait till 2021 for season 3. Well, we'll have to see. Filmmakers, I think, want to move on to a different subject, but I think they may find it hard to get away from this. Barb was at the trailer on the 31st at 5:30, and she saw and heard nothing. I know. It's amazing how nobody during business hours, nobody heard this girl screaming and getting raped and chained to a bedpost and, thrashing for her life. Nobody heard any of this. It's amazing during business hours. As far as there being a season 3, that will get decided by the filmmakers. But like I said, last time they waited 4 or 5 months to decide whether or not they were going to. So we'll have to wait. Yes, he moved out October 15th. That's correct. Well, they just keep shooting her down. Well, they're going to keep doing that. Well, Judge Sukowitz there in Manitowoc is, for sure. We'll see what the appeals court's going to do. Because the appeals court may be tired of the black eye that making a murderer is for Wisconsin, and they may decide it's time to clean house. I'm hoping that that's the way they reason. The filmmakers are too invested. Can they just walk away from it? That's what I mean. I don't know if they really can. I think they have interests in other things and they want to do other things, but I think if anything, they're going to have to end up working on concurrent projects, because I do truly believe they will find it hard to walk away from making a murder. But like I said, give it 4 or 5 months, because, man, they've just finished. This was like giving birth to a baby, putting this together for them. I mean, you got to kind of think of it in those terms. And they put this whole thing together, and now they've given it to the people. It's there, right? They're exhausted. They put everything into it, and I don't know I don't know how to explain it, but I guess I kind of say I've experienced it on a smaller level with my tiny little videos that I make, right, and the effort that I put in. There's like once you upload a video, you just want to sit back and talk to people about it or whatever, and you don't want to think about the next one. It's just not what you want to do. So like I said, last time it took about 4, 5, 6 months before they decided they were going to make MAM2, and I would say give them a little bit of time right now, and we'll find out where they stand on it. Let's see. Steve said as soon as she disappeared, the police came and looked through his place. Yep, exactly. There was nothing really that they noticed, right? No, absolutely not. But I think that was on the second, though, when they came, or something. Or no, not on the second, because it was after they reported her missing. So it had to be on the 3rd, probably the morning of the 4th. Anyone else concerned with the fact that Bobby Dassey has a daughter? Well, you gotta imagine that he loves his kids, and he wouldn't want to hurt his kids. What is Ryan Hilligas doing with the day planner? Yeah, I know. It's absolutely, talk about a red thumb, sticking out like a red thumb. That's another one that sticks out like a red thumb. Like, what the hell's going on here? I think Minai Ryder must feel so bad. This is the first case. I'm sure she's feeling kind of down. Okay. So the next thing I think is a big takeaway from this season here of Making a Murderer is the way they illustrate exactly how Teresa Halbach was killed. Really. I think this is a big deal because it wasn't by a 22, bullet to the head. When you look at the spatter on the interior of the RAV4 door, the interior cargo door, when you see that splatter, you know that she had to have been getting struck by a rather blunt object similar to a hammer or something kind of heavy and blunt that was throwing large spatter drops backward onto the interior of the interior of the door of the cargo door of the RAV4. So, and that is going to be what caused the beveling that they are trying to claim means that she was shot. I think that's why they want to get their hands on the skull fragments so that they can take them to microtrace, where Chris Palahniuk can get those under the microtrace microscopes, and they can analyze it, because Chris Palahniuk saw something. He saw something in the radial spectrography back from 2005 about on the radial beveling there on the skull fragment, and he desperately wants to get his hands on those. And I think it all basically, in my opinion, my gut feeling about it is that he feels he can prove that beveling is from being hit, her head being hit by a very heavy hammer, and that sort of thing. That's kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen there, and so I hope that's what we're gonna see. Okay, exactly where is the entire case now? I know the motion was dismissed by the judge. Okay, so right now we're with Stephen. Right now, he has two things pending with the appeals court. He has the original 1,000-page motion for post-conviction relief that he filed, and its supplements and everything that went along with it. That has now been filed, and that is with the appeals court, but it's been stayed because as they were getting ready to argue about that, the state handed over that CD. And when they did that, Zellner told the appeals court, we need to bring this into evidence so that we can talk about this, because it, blah, 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 right? The appeals court then sends it back down to Judge Sukowicz again, and then there's oral arguments filed, and written arguments filed and all that stuff, and she denies it again, right? And so now the thing about the CD is now coming back to the appeals court. So it's essentially two things. So the whole thing about the original motion for post-conviction relief is essentially right now on hold, while all of this stuff about the CD and the computer evidence essentially is getting sorted out. The judge is an issue. Yeah, I think the appellate court may end up sending it to a different judge. I think that's where this is headed. We'll have to see where the appellate judges are going to land on this. But I mean, Zellner brings up plenty of evidence that proves that the state's, what the state says happened didn't really happen. I mean, a lot of it is not true. Sorry, I get something to drink. Yes, the CD is full of things that would have made it very apparent to Dean and Jerry that there was things on the Dassey computer that they needed to look into, and that's why it was held back, because they wanted to fly it under the radars. Essentially, they didn't want Dean and Jerry to realize there was something there that would help them get a suspect to meet the high standard of Denny. Well, Judge Sukowicz actually sat on the victim crime rights board or whatever at one point, and A lot of people are making the correlation that she sympathizes with them. Yeah. It could be that they all are just underestimating KZ, or they literally just don't know what to do, and so they've come up with some idea and they're hoping it'll work. I don't know. The way that they're handling this is all very strange. Hey, great score on the bullet hole and replaced Odor aftermarket window on the Avery salvage yard. Too bad they can't move the case to another jurisdiction. Well, the appeals court could easily do that. It's up to them if they wanted to. Man, you shouldn't underestimate KZ for certain. So yeah, I mean, I think that's another important. That's one of the important things that was pointed out here in MAM2 for people to understand is exactly how Teresa was killed and where. Well, at least in terms of where she and the RAV4 were in proximity to each other. The next thing I wanted to talk about now was the Hood Latch DNA. Such a source of frustration this Hood Latch DNA is for me, because number one, it's the thing that Ken Kratz still keeps going on about how could officers have planted sweat on the hood latch or whatever. It's like, well, why didn't you test the hood prop, or why didn't you guys try to get prints off of the hood itself, where when you're walking up to a hood and everything, you always kind of put your hand on it or whatever. Why was nobody looking for prints or anything? There's just suddenly this mysterious 1.9 nanograms of Stephen's DNA on the hood latch. And people, that you have to understand just how ridiculously large an amount that is, because they did an experiment that you might have seen in MAM2 there, where they were showing people opening the hood and they were taking the measurements of it. Only 4 people even left a measurable amount of DNA. And it was like 0.06, 0.07, 0.09. Okay? And somehow Stephen, in one go, left 1.9 nanograms. That's why it's reasoned that what happened is one of the groin swabs that got thrown away, supposedly, got relabeled as a hood latch swab. Question, is Teresa's RAV4 the same RAV4 found on the Avery salvage yard in the same RAV4 in the That's a good question. I've done a few videos that kind of delve into that question. I don't have a strong opinion about it, but I let people kind of decide that one for themselves. They just rubbed SA's toothbrush on the handle or something, right? Well, or that's what they probably did to the key. Anyway, it was on purpose. I love how it was pointed out that no one tested the hood, yeah, the prop, right? Absolutely. It is odd, but deductive reasoning says planted, right? Sweat DNA does not exist. Kathy, yeah, exactly. Kathy could tell you, and had no prints of Stephen on the RAV, right? Exactly, and that's why the groin swab has no soot on it. Right, exactly. It doesn't have any black in it, any black from all the carbon and everything in that engine. I wonder why they would. Wonder if they would find toothpaste. Yeah, let's get Chris Palahniuk and Microtrace on that one there. Look for the toothpaste. Bullet holes don't heal themselves. Plus Barb said today that the computer was not Bobby's. Who the hell did it belong to then? It doesn't matter. It was in Bobby's room and he was using it. Zellner needs to get a hold of the RAV4. She said it's buried in some sort of case. Yeah, I did hear about that actually. They got that thing stowed away somewhere. Ken Kratz's favorite words: sweat, sweating, sweat. Yeah, he sweated sweat sweatily as he sweated down the hall. Yeah, definitely. I love how the local coroner was left out. Actually, yeah, absolutely. That was absolute crap what they did to her, man. I mean, and like I was saying earlier in the video, I mean, when she points out that technically when there's a dead body in Manitowoc, she actually outranks the head sheriff himself. You know, so I mean, it's just amazing, really, what the shenanigans that they're pulling, and it's just, you know, at this point, it's going to become obvious. I don't see how it can't at this point, where a lot more people are going to be starting to see just how off the evidence is and how wrong they got it. So I finished all of them now, and I'm confused as where we stand now for both boys. Okay. It might have been used by Tom Yanda, yeah. Okay. Was he sweating while he he probably was. He's threatening her. You survived. Why didn't she have them arrested? Yeah, right. Pissed me off that they left her out. I think I must have missed something there. Watch the interview Kratz did with him and Sam. He was sweaty just sitting down. Yeah. Oh yeah. Kratz is a sweaty dude. No pictures of the bones before. Yeah, exactly. That's one of the biggest problems. I mean, there's just so many problems with this case, and they're, you know, they just try to like say, oh yeah, that's no big deal, and then another one, oh that's no big deal, and then another one, oh that's no big deal, and then another one, oh that's no big deal. No, you know what? After a certain number of things, I mean, after a certain number of issues, it matters. You know, it certainly matters. There's no explaining it away. Steve, I doubt Steve was using the PC. Just because he was working during the days. Bobby was the only one who didn't work during the days. That's kind of the issue, the problem there. I absolutely feel horrible for Barb in this too. I feel like she's been bullied and pushed around, and you know, I just, my heart goes out to her, and I, you know, I have sympathy for her. Are the bones Boutwell? That's certainly something that if it turned out to be, it wouldn't surprise me. Kratz bringing his much younger girlfriend to court. Yikes! Yeah, you thought Leah was the younger lady, huh? Yeah, she is. She's a fair amount younger than he is. She's got every bit. She's every bit. She's like a carbon copy of him mentally, just female. How do you feel about them making Dean and Jerry seem to be ineffective? Well, you heard Dean and Jerry tell you themselves. You heard Dean and Jerry say it themselves. That Kathleen Zellner has to say that Dean and Jerry were ineffective in this or that or whatever. Wherever she can, she doesn't have options to waste. So you heard Dean and Jerry tell you themselves. That's where that stands. Wonder if the filmmakers paid the Avery's parents to be part of the documentary. I would certainly hope so, but it's none of my business. The DOJ is too busy with Russian collusion. Too bad the DOJ is too busy with Russian collusion. Okay. My heart breaks for all of them and Teresa's family too. Yes, absolutely. Boutwell died from a drug overdose at her home. Yes, she did. Kratz is the prize, though. Yeah, he's the prize, all right. Why was King Kratz involved anymore? He inserted himself, really. From what I understand, that podium he stepped up to was there, and almost anybody, virtually anybody, could have stepped up to it. If somebody who wasn't in connection with the case or whatever stepped up to it, the reporters and the press probably wouldn't have reacted very much. But the fact is, it was like there, and virtually almost anybody could have stepped up to it. He's an attention whore. Yeah, talking about Ken Kratz. Yeah, he certainly is. So, talking about the bullet. Now, obviously, we see in MAM2 here where Kathleen Zellner and she's got a little team there, and they go down to the garage, and they start shooting through that wood that the garage is made of, and to recreate the bullet, the slugs essentially. And so they go in and they're doing all that testing, and like I say, for me the biggest thing, and they're saying it too because they're telling you that somebody got in there and plucked one of them out of the wall, or picked one up, found one on the ground and picked one up off the ground, and they ended up putting Teresa's DNA on that. And you guys have heard me say this before, like I said, and I have videos about it that show the pictures. That bullet, there's no way that bullet was in that garage since Teresa was shot. And the reason why that is because it has none of the dust from when they jackhammered the crack on it. In fact, it's sitting on top of the veins of that dust. And it's completely clean and shiny. There's no way that bullet was there the night supposedly Teresa was killed. So it's absolute poppycock. So seen theories saying Teresa Halbach is in witness protection. Yeah, I've seen theories of that as well. There are people that believe that she might still be alive. I have seen pictures of a woman in Canada who has an uncanny resemblance to Teresa, and her name happens to be Teresa, but I just don't think it's her. But I don't know. There is some fishiness in this with the death certificate, with certain things, so I'm not ruling anything out just because the investigation is so bad that I honestly the investigation is so bad I can't rule out the seemingly ridiculous. Whatever happened to the green yellow stuff they seen on the key under the microscope? I don't know. I think I didn't catch that. When Teresa's mom called in for a missing person, it sounded like she was reporting a missing neighbor. Right, like, yeah, I guess I see what you mean there, but I don't know. I don't like to speak ill of the victim's family, particularly the mom. Yeah, the bullet makes no sense. Absolutely. It's just ridiculous. Figure, would Teresa be into it? If she was, that would create a paper trail, though. I mean, I don't know. Seems unlikely. I just don't know. I mean, but like I said, I'm not ruling anything out because nothing would shock me in this. You don't actually need to kill someone to frame Stephen Avery. Maybe. Whatever happened to the sightings down by the river and the cell phone? Yeah, that got handed to Colburn. I have no idea what happened to it after that. I'm in Ontario. Hello, Caroline Spencer. Couldn't stand Judge Sucky Witch. What a horror. Sucky Witch. That's a good one. Speak on Zellner saying Knight Rider missed opportunity at oral arguments. Ah, yes. You know, I kind of felt the same way, to be perfectly honest. I mean, but I'm not a lawyer, but I felt the same way because I was mad at Judge Can the way that he was talking to Laura. Like, because he kept saying, what they needed a second killer? They just needed a second killer? And it's like, all it did was prove to me that Judge Can did not review this case. He did not. He did not do his due diligence and review this case. Because if he had, he would have known the reason why Brendan got caught up in this whole mess is because these officers wanted to seal the deal against his uncle. And the fact that he was just being completely oblivious to that fact means either he's corrupt and didn't want to see it, or he just wasn't doing his job and just had no awareness of what the heck was happening. So, the Mad Scotsman has arrived, Mr. Capaldi. That's funny though, Paul. I was just getting ready to think about signing off, so. I thought the brother did it a bit dodgy. Brother, yeah, oh yeah, Michael Halbach has struck me as odd as well. And the other judge saying she was trying to change the law after she had been asked by another judge, another of the majority judges. He asked her for her opinion of what they should tell officers if they were to agree with her, right? So she starts to answer that question, and that other judge jumps down her throat as if she's saying, you know, oh, that's pissed me off so much. But to get back to what I was saying is that Judge Cam was pissing me off with that, and I really wanted Laura Nyrider to come back at him and say, no, it's, you know, these officers were desperate to create a narrative because they didn't have one to convict his uncle. I mean, I really truly wish she would have used that moment to really take it to the next level, but I also get what Judge Cam was trying to do. He was trying to throw her off, and he was trying to be a jerk about it. And I'll tell you what, I have no love for that guy. He's a real jerk. If TH reported the RAV4 to the other insurance, then that insurance company would have it reported. But it never happened. Otherwise, this person who told me this also said that the DOJ had a copy of it. I guarantee you, if the DOJ had a copy of it, they would not be bothering the victim's brother to find a picture of it in his old computers. Trust me. It's complete and total BS. I still think they might be involved in planting evidence. Certainly. This entire case strikes me as strange. It's crazy. Everyone worked against them, and it's all sort of fell into place for everyone. I don't even think they all intended to work as one, but it happened. Yeah, it's like everybody did their little bit, because and a friend of mine from England said it the best. My friend Mark Oddie, when I was struggling for a way to describe it once, he described it this way. He said, all compasses point north. So if you imagine all law enforcement as compasses, they all point the same way. So therefore they all complement each other. I'm so mad that they won twice, but yeah, and got in the on-bank review, Hail Mary, the Hail Mary by Brad Schimmel. He files for on-bank review. You saw in MAM2, out of 8,000 cases, 44 cases get reviewed by on-bank. Right? And that's how rare that is. I mean, it's just bizarre. Brendan was completely robbed. Since I was already thinking about signing off, I'll go ahead and use this opportunity to go on about the control question. Look, something about the on-bank majority here, folks, and for those of you who aren't fully versed on what Brendan went through completely, the on-bank majority really pissed me off because in their decision they talk about what it takes to meet, what standards you have to meet to be able to overcome AEDPA. And one of those is if there isn't just an unreasonable finding of fact in the trial court. The trial court determined that when Brendan Dassey agreed with Tom Fassbender's made-up fact, the trial court deemed that was Brendan resisting. And it's not. Not only does the on-bank majority miss that fact as the completely unreasonable fact that it is, but they end up using it in their own decision and say that it's proof of Brendan resisting. It's mind-boggling. I really don't know what to say about the majority judges over at the 7th Circuit right now, because it's hard for me to believe that they made such, I don't know, an elementary mistake for somebody who's learned, you know, who's gone to college and understands the English language. I don't know. Anyway. Unfortunately, confessions don't get thrown out by themselves. Takedown of Scott Tye, all it took was the phone call and he exposed him. Yeah, well, I think Teresa had a real problem with her brother. Yeah, I think she might have had some issues with him. Why did Buting and Strang not bring up that this TH's phone was pinging off of the cell tower? And I know there is that question of why were Dean and Jerry, how did they seem to let so many of these things slip? That you know, I agree. I agree. It's why ineffective assistance of counsel is one of the things that Zellner's filing. They tell Brendan she has a tattoo, but Brendan already said she had no marking. He then changes and says that she did, but couldn't remember what it was. Right. So that shows he was open to suggestion. Absolutely. He flip-flops. He goes from saying, no, she didn't have any markings, to saying, and then when Tom Fassbender says, do you disagree with me when I say that, Brendan automatically goes into panic mode because he doesn't want to be in disagreement with the investigators. And he goes, no, but I don't know what it was. It shows exactly how malleable and suggestible that Brendan was, not that he was resisting officers. There's no way to construe that he as him resisting officers. There's just no way. It's not. It's completely bogus and ridiculous to claim that is him resisting officers. Hey, Mad Scotsman. I'm sure you got something to say. He is easily swayed by his authority figures, particularly the investigators. He did not like the prospect of the investigator asking him if he was disagreeing with him. That clearly affected Brendan and caused him to react. He just can't remember what the previous stories are. My only defense of Dean and Jerry is that they didn't have the time nor the money. I agree. The fact is, the money was running thin. And the way that computer stuff was handed over, they still, I mean, even if they had the money, they would have still been very hard pressed to get that handled in that sort of thing. So I agree. Boutwell family had to wait. Yes, I agree. The Boutwell family had to wait too long. It was ridiculous. That was, you know, another fishy thing. It's why I say, if it ends up turning out that those are Carmen Boutwell's bones, I will not be surprised. I'm not sure that that's what we're going to find out, but like I said, I won't be surprised if that ends up being the case. Buting and String came out looking like heroes. In MEM Season 2, KZ made them look like complete amateurs. I don't know that that's exactly what... I don't know about that. But she was... Look, I'm going to remind everybody of what Dean Strang told you himself. He said it himself, right? That Kathleen Zellner, Stephen's new attorney, has to look at ineffective assistance of counsel, and she has to be open to every single option. He explained it in this way: she does not have options to waste. So he is not criticizing, he is not holding it against her for accusing them of ineffective assistance of counsel and those sort of things. He just understands that it's the nature of the game. And so I would encourage more of us to accept that type of a philosophy. No coroner, I know, yep. So what else court-wise are we waiting for on both cases? With like I said earlier, with Stephen, he has two different things now pending with the Court of Appeals. The Brady violation with the CD being withheld, and then his original petition for post-conviction relief. He has two things pending. Brendan right now is still in a state of kind of waiting and figuring out what the next step is. I don't think the result would have been any different, even if they had the computer evidence in the first trial. Kratz would have probably. I don't know, man. I don't know. Think about it. Those images, you can't deny that those would have created a potential motive, and Dean and Jerry would have been able to confront Bobby with that stuff on the stand. So and the jury would have been able to see it. I gotta imagine it would have had an impact. No, one commenter in here is talking about Carmen Boutwell's bones and that sort of thing, and it's been suggested before that the bones found in the burn pit are actually those of Carmen Boutwell, and that's why it took so long for them to get the remains back to Carmen's family and that sort of thing. It was just somebody in here who was commenting about that theory, and I was just talking about it a little bit, but. Those internet searches for Bobby would certainly have provided reasonable doubt for Stephen. I think so. The things he was looking at the things on that computer are a cause for concern. There's just no two ways about it. He's the only one that puts, yes, Teresa walking toward the trailer, exactly. And we have statements from his brother Brian, who clearly said that at the time he was saying that he saw Teresa leave. It only changed for court. Then we have in the phone call, Barb and Scott in the phone call with Stephen, where they say, no, he says she left now. That's what they're saying he said. And the fact of the matter is that then we hear in little what's it called, little chat he has with John Dietering, basically. Then we hear that he's back to she never left and was walking towards Stephen's trailer again. So, Bobby's gonna have to answer questions at some point. I don't know how he's gonna avoid it with his current conflicting statements and things. I don't know how he'll be able to avoid it. But at this point, I would want to see what the lawyers have to say, meaning the Halbach family should at least listen to all the evidence. I agree. And that's what I preach for everybody. Just look at the evidence. Look at what you see in front of you. Look at these things and make, use your own, judgment and determine, whether or not they seem innocent or whatever. I really hope that the Halbach family comes to that point someday. They may not want to do anything. They may not want to say anything openly, but they may want to kind of slowly separate themselves from the agents of the state and the law enforcement there, and to where they kind of just back away a bit, because I'd hate for them to get caught up in the fallout when this eventually starts to fall apart for the state of Wisconsin. Yeah, exactly. Okay, Rick Patrick brings up a good point here. One thing I wondered with the key that was found, other than the fact that it didn't have THDNA on it, of course, which was odd, but there was no like house keys to her studio that, you know, she had. No, I mean, none of those things. No like key to a gate at her house or a shed. And trust me, I was in Wisconsin. I tell you what, every piece of property had about 4 sheds on it, and always one of them was about ready to fall down. I swear. That weather there and that climate's rough on the buildings there. But no, seriously. And so, I mean, I gotta imagine she had some reason for some smaller keys for like master locks or something at her house on her property that she had to lock up or something. So, I mean, it's just, yeah, there should have been more than one key. And it certainly shouldn't have been a valet key. But, yeah, so... Has my channel experienced a recent surge in viewers? I think so, Mr. Capaldi. Yes, it has. I've had quite a few views lately. The signal lamp or red herring? Oh, I don't think so. Oh, no. That's going to be the proof that they planted the RAV4 there, Jade Richards. I don't know how him having a low IQ and getting a story from Meet the Girls is... I'm not sure. I'm not following what you're saying there, C4P 420. That makes me wonder if any amount of real evidence would make a difference with the... Well, it's obviously... The only thing I can say here is that if the satisfaction is not reached with the courts, then it has to be reached through other means. But and the only other means there is, and this is important, the only other means there is at that point is that the people do it. That means like you and I, mainly in this case, the people there locally in Wisconsin need to clean up house. And put people into power that are thinking about putting their education systems and their justice system and everything on the path to being in the 21st century. It takes the people to get fed up with, you know, with everything and deciding to put the people in that are going to get it done. And that's where it all comes down to us, and it's our responsibility. We can sit here and we can rail at all these people who did all this and made this bad investigation and everything, and we can criticize them. But it's also ultimately our own fault, or at least ultimately our own responsibility to clean the mess up when we know that the people in power are not, they have no incentive to clean the mess up themselves. They're in it. They're, you know, doing whatever they're doing, and they have no intention of stopping. And the only thing that's going to stop it is when the people decide they're fed up and stop it, and put people in place that are going to start putting the people first. That's what needs to happen. So try not to despair. Try not to let the negative vibe of it get you down, and try to remember that the real path is through, you know, perseverance and, you know, passion and just, you know, for the most part, just giving a crap. Really, just that. Just giving a crap. So inconsistent justice between rich and poor, right? Well, there's all kinds of ways we can skin the cat, of course, of what's wrong with the justice system and this system and that system, but, you know, so. Shout out to Pam Stern. She has a face. You just want to punch. If the jury was biased, then no amount of evidence will save the defendant. The juror who was dismissed was called away after his daughter. Yeah, was in a very suspicious. Yes, absolutely. That is a very suspicious happening that happened in this. This is another one of the reasons why I ultimately decided I felt like Avery had been framed. Was the thing with the juror and his daughter was one of the huge factors that really convinced me. All right, folks. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and cut the stream off now. I mean, it's been about an hour and 25 minutes, so an hour and 30 minutes. I'm gonna come back again tomorrow for those of you who want to tune back in. There's more and more people that are, some people weren't able to get through all 10. They had to split it up over a couple days. So hopefully by tomorrow, I'm looking to go maybe more like around maybe 5 or 6. So that there will be less people, because it'll be a Sunday, so people will have to go to work and stuff. So I don't want to do it too late at night. So I'm thinking maybe tomorrow around 5 or 6 o'clock, go live again where we can get together and talk about some more subjects and more topics about making a murder or two. And so if you all want to join back in then, I'd love to see you all. It's a lot of fun having these little videos and being able to talk to all of you and seeing your feedback in real time. It's really a lot of fun. So, I mean, I hope you all will come back tomorrow and be part of the conversation again. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. The show would have ended was the way I want is if Kratz being the killer. That's kind of funny, Wiggles eyes. Okay, you guys have a good night. Good night, Maggie. Okay, Megan Monahan, try to finish all 10 by tomorrow, because tomorrow around 5 or 6 Pacific time, Pacific Standard Time, which is about 8 o'clock Central, which is about 9 o'clock Eastern. Yeah, but try to get as far as you can by tomorrow, and then come on back and for the discussion tomorrow. Alrighty, guys, it's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to tomorrow. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We'll see ya.